For much of the time that I lived in Chicago, it seemed like the hardest event tickets to score weren't for a Bears football game, or a Cubs baseball game, or the Second City Comedy Theater. The tickets that were in highest demand were those for the Oprah show, especially around the Christmas holidays. It was never announced ahead of time, but sometime in the weeks leading up to Christmas, Oprah would host one of her Favorite Things episodes, where she featured items, mostly luxuries, that she had discovered over the past year that she really, really liked. It could be a food product or a tech gadget, a designer fashion piece, or a small kitchen appliance. And the reason folks wanted to be in the audience on Favorite Things Day, especially, is that as she introduced and described each new item, Oprah would call out in an excited, sing-songy way that, "Susanna, you get a $600 Vitamix blender. Christine, you get a Vitamix. Steve, you get a Vitamix." Yay. For those who were lucky enough to land a ticket to be in the audience that day, they counted themselves as very fortunate indeed, like they'd won the lottery and found themselves going home with a carload of fabulous gifts. I have to confess that so often when we read a gospel story about Jesus healing someone, I think of that chosen person like an audience member at an Oprah Favorite Things show. Someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time, but instead of landing a haul of luxury gift items, their prize was that they had caught Jesus' eye and received his compassion and healing. I'm happy for that one person, of course, but it makes me wonder why only them and not everyone else who needed Jesus' help. Surely there were others who would have loved to have caught Jesus' attention. And in fact, in today's passage from John's Gospel, we hear that gathered around the pool at Bethzatha are many folks in need of healing. People who are paralyzed, blind, and lame, the text says. For some reason, though, Jesus chooses only this one man. A man who for 38 years has been lying next to a pool of water famed for its healing properties. Legend has it that when angels come and stir up the water, the first person into the pool will be healed. Only the first person. For 38 years, that first place champion has not been this guy. Now, Jesus doesn't pick the 38-year veteran because the man was calling out to him or professing his belief in Jesus as the Son of God or recognizing him as a special healer. And later, we actually find out that this man becomes sort of a thorn in Jesus' side, who kind of throws Jesus under the proverbial bus of the religious authorities, identifying Jesus as the one who brought about his healing on the Sabbath. So I think Jesus has other reasons, a broader purpose for zeroing in on this one particular man. In the story, Jesus comes along, takes in the scene, and then poses a question to the man that seems unnecessary at best, or even kind of cruel or rude at worst. Do you want to be made well? I wouldn't blame the man if he had replied with attitude, yeah? Why do you think I've been here for almost 40 years? But Jesus' question isn't actually about whether the man wants to have his physical health restored. It's really a challenge, a critique of the system in which this man has dwelled for 4 decades. The question Jesus poses asks, is the man certain that he can be healed here? Here in a system that pits one sick or disabled person against another? Here in a system that favors those who are less sick, more mobile, more agile, or with more resources, friends or family, who can carry them to the waters ahead of others. Here in a system based on competition and scarcity, winners and losers, haves and have-nots. The name of the pool, Beth Zatha, means house of mercy or house of grace. And ironically, it is the most vulnerable, the most fragile, the people most in need of healing who cannot access this mercy or grace. Jesus doesn't buy into the narrative about this place. He doesn't stir up the water to activate its healing. He doesn't take the man to the water. He heals the man, yes, but his real aim is taking on and revealing the hypocrisy of this rigged, biased, religious, social, and economic system. If this healing pool were really of God and aligned with God's just future, God's kingdom, then everyone would have full and equitable access to the water. Everyone would have the opportunity to be healed, regardless of their relational or other resources. Everyone would be able to tap into God's house of mercy and house of grace. And lest we think that this kind of belief in God's grace and mercy as something to be meted out in limited quantities to only a select handful of people, lest we think that such a belief is an eccentric or quaint theology held by a less sophisticated culture 2,000 years ago, then I would direct your attention to a New York Times op-ed column published last month in early April. The Times columnist David French reported that in March, Pastor Paula White, a senior advisor in the new White House Faith Office, began offering 7 supernatural blessings for the Easter season. If you honor God, she said, during the period of Passover and Easter, God will assign an angel to you. He'll be an enemy to your enemies. He'll give you prosperity. He'll take sickness away from you. He will give you long life. He'll bring increase in inheritance, and he'll bring a special year of blessing. The suggested price for these extraordinary gifts was an offering to Paula White Ministries of $1,000 or more. And if health, wealth, and an angel weren't enough, White's ministry would also give you a gorgeous Waterford crystal cross. God's grace and power made available for sale. God's grace and power exploited and commoditized. Luxury spiritual merchandise for those who can afford it. This is the kind of thing that Jesus railed about in the Gospels. The perversion of the unconditional, spacious, abundant, and inclusive nature of God. Jesus was fighting for an end to the systems and practices that obscured and corrupted who God really is and how God created the world and all that dwells in it to be. The author, Robin Wall Kimmerer, recently published a book titled The Serviceberry: Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World. In it, she presents a vision for how we human beings can survive, then thrive, only if we organize our lives around the same systems and processes by which the natural world works. Gifts and gratitude, reciprocity, interdependence, and community. She reflects on the serviceberry, a fruit-bearing shrub native to the area where she lives, whose name includes the root word for gift. Kimmerer writes, When we speak of service berries not as things or products or commodities, but as gifts, the whole relationship changes. I can't help but gaze at the berries cupped like jewels in my hand and breathe out my gratitude. Gratitude, Kimmerer says, is so much more than a polite thank you. It is the thread that connects us in a deep relationship, simultaneously physical and spiritual, as our bodies are fed and spirits nourished by the sense of belonging, which is the most vital of foods. Gratitude creates a sense of abundance, the knowing that you have what you need. In that climate of sufficiency, our hunger for more abates, and we take only what we need in respect for the generosity of the giver. If our first response is gratitude, then our second is reciprocity, to give a gift in return. What would I give these plants, she writes, in return for their generosity? It could be a direct response like weeding or water, or a song of thanks that sends appreciation out on the wind, or indirect, like donating to my local land trust so that more habitat for the gift givers will be saved, or making art that invites others into the web of reciprocity. Gratitude and reciprocity are the currency of a gift economy, and they have the remarkable property of multiplying with every exchange, their energy concentrating as they pass from hand to hand, a truly renewable resource. I accept the gift from the bush and then spread that gift with a dish of berries to my neighbor who makes a pie to share with his friend who feels so wealthy in food and friendship that he volunteers at the food pantry. And so it goes. How we think ripples out to how we behave. If we view these berries or that coal or forest as an object, as property, it can be exploited as a commodity in a market economy. We know the consequences of that. Why then have we permitted the dominance of economic systems that commoditize everything, that create scarcity instead of abundance, that promote accumulation rather than sharing? We have surrendered our values to an economic system that actively harms what we love. How should we organize ourselves to sustain life? Kimmerer writes, in a gift economy, wealth is understood as having enough to share, and the practice for dealing with abundance is to give it away. In fact, status is determined not by how much one accumulates, but by how much one gives away. The currency in a gift economy is relationship, which is expressed as gratitude, as interdependence, and the ongoing cycles of reciprocity. A gift economy nurtures the community bonds that enhance mutual well-being. The economic unit is we rather than I, as all flourishing is mutual. Do you want to be made well? Jesus asked the man who'd been sitting by the side of the pool at Bethzatha for 38 years. Did he want to continue to entrust his health, his life, his heart, his future to a system that hadn't served him, that wasn't serving him year after year? Jesus could ask us the very same question. Yes, Jesus, I want to be made well, to be whole and cared for, loved and respected, to be safe and seen and heard and valued. But I would like that for all of us, for each and every one of us, not just those who've been lucky enough to be born in the right place and time with the proper pedigree and a ticket to an Oprah Favorite Things show. I want all of us to be made well because my well-being is inextricably tied up in yours, because all flourishing is mutual, because nobody's free until everybody is free, because God made us to be for each other, and we are all in this together. Amen.